Welcome to another episode of Battlefield 4 Hardcore Meta, a series covering all Battlefield 4 primary and sidearm weapons in a specifically hardcore context. In this video, we will be covering the only two Bullpup LMGs in BF4, the L86A1 and the QBB-95-1. Guns that come closer to performing more like assault rifles, with improved performance when mobile, while still retaining superior damage over range as compared to the all-class carbines. To start, let's go over the unlock requirements for these two weapons. The L86 is unlocked by default. You will have access to the weapon immediately. The QBB, on the other hand, requires you to accumulate 15,000 LMG experience, a simple task that requires you to use LMGs to eventually access the gun. Now, let's go over the common stats between the two LMGs. The damage model of these two LMGs is the typical found among most of the LMGs. You can get a kill with 3 shots anywhere to the body out to 34 meters. If you land nothing but chest shots, this extends to 47 meters. A headshot and chest shot results in a kill out to 54 meters. At any range, the bullet is still flying. It takes 4 shots to kill a target anywhere to the body, or 2 if you manage 2 consecutive headshots. The next stat I want to go over, the aim down sight's move speed comes to a improved stat of 75% regular moving speed. This increased mobility makes corner stalking with your weapon aimed and ready a viable tactic for close ranged combat situations. To top it off, these two LMGs have the best hipfire cone available for any LMGs, and this results in some of the best hip-firing performance possible for LMGs, with only the RPK beating them, and only under specific circumstances. The initial aim-down sight's accuracy when standing still for both of these LMGs is 0.25, being dead average among LMGs. This matches the Bullpup assault rifle accuracy, and is generally an acceptable amount of precision for middle-ranged combat. That accuracy becomes a lot less great when moving, coming to an effective accuracy of 1.13. However, in the context where you find yourself moving and shooting, assuming you equip the right attachments and you are in closer ranges, tends to be acceptable when considered in conjunction with the fast movement while aimed. Also identical between the two is the recoil decrease value, which comes to the best possible for LMGs, a value of 18. This makes the already low recoil values, which I'll go over later, even less of an issue for longer bursts. The deploy time of both of these guns is also identical, and is the fastest available for LMGs, at 0.85 seconds. These weapons are not necessarily impressive when compared to other classes of weapons, but will perform admirably compared to their heavier brethren. You will be able to swap to the weapon from a gadget fairly quickly, or even rely on the weapon with verticality involving combat scenarios. Finally, the last stat the two weapons perfectly share is a stat that largely doesn't meaningfully apply to the L86, but holds at least some minor importance for the QBB. The maximum spread value for both of these weapons is 1.8. The L86 in this case would require you to fire most of its magazine before that value even comes into play. However, if you find yourself using the QBB in a situation where you are suppressing a lane with a excessively long burst, you will benefit from this comparatively low value. Don't expect to hit anything, but you'll be statistically better off with this tactic with the QBB compared to every other LMG due to this stat being paired with a decently sized magazine. Moving on to differences, the first thing I want to go over is the velocity, which is relatively similar between the two, with the L86 coming out somewhat on top with a muzzle velocity of 650 meters a second, while the QBB is only a little behind at 630 meters a second. In both cases, the velocity is fairly good, and hitting moving targets shouldn't be an issue with these weapons. The reload speeds are generally an area where these two LMGs are somewhat stronger than average, stemming primarily from their conventional magazine style instead of box magazines, though perhaps not really impressive compared to all other reload speeds for full autos. The L86 has the better times, with a tactical of 2.6 seconds and an empty reload coming to a flat 4 seconds. The QBB ends up feeling more sluggish with a tactical of 4.3 seconds and an empty of 4.9 seconds. However, in the context of LMGs, this is not too much of an issue. Further, the QBB's longer reload can be mitigated in that while the animation itself is long, the threshold for when the weapon counts as officially reloaded is noticeably faster, and you can actually shave off more than half a second off the reload time by rapidly swapping to something and then back to the QBB the instant the ammo is loaded. This might take some practice, however, since you don't have an ammo readout in hardcore. The overall recoil stats are all in general fairly similar between the two weapons as well. To start, the L86 has a upwards recoil of 0.29 and the QBB has 0.24. These are both fairly good values and shouldn't cause much of an issue for staying on target, the L86's kick being a little more noticeable. Similarly low, the overall horizontal recoil of these LMGs is also generally pretty tame. With an equal pull of 0.16 left and right, the L86's overall horizontal recoil is easy to compensate for. The QBB has a noticeably more lopsided horizontal recoil of 0.19 left and 0.09 right, but it's not significant enough to cause a serious issue when it comes to precision. One thing that technically is a tad more different when it comes to recoil is the actual multipliers applied to the first shot. The L86 is 1.5 times, which is a little worse than middle of the road, and the QBB is 1.85 times, the worst possible multiplier for an LMG. However, once you do the math, the effective first shot upwards recoil ends up not being particularly noticeable in terms of difference, with the L86 coming to 0.435 and the QBB coming to 0.444. In combination with the previously mentioned speedy recoil reset speed, controlling these firearms is generally a simple task. The spread bloom and spread fade stats, the QBB edges out the L86 in this case, with a spread increase per shot of 0.084 and a spread decrease per second unfired of 14.7. The QBB ties for third place with the LSAT spread increase and decrease. This means the QBB is consistently accurate and should work even fairly well beyond middle ranges. The L86, on the other hand, while not drastically worse with a bloom of 0.091 and fade of 12.7, crosses the line into being more focused on middle-ranged combat. It can function farther out, but not particularly well. Moving on to the RPM, the L86 in this case comes out moderately above the QBB with a cyclic rate of 700 rounds per minute, somewhat above average for LMGs. The QBB, on the other hand, comes in at 650, which is dead average for LMGs. Obviously, the L86 has a more competitive time to kill as a result, but overall neither is breaking any records. That said, if you want to survive playing more aggressively, the L86 is likely to come out more often the winner. Getting into what is the most drastic difference between the two is the magazine capacity and kill capacity, which with the reload stats we've already gone over, combines to give us what kind of ammo reliability we can expect from the guns. The L86 is tied for last place with the U100 in this regard, having a conventional assault rifle sized magazine of 30 plus 1 rounds, giving us a kill capacity of 10 and a third kills per reload. This means its overall ammo reliability only barely ekes out the U100 and, as far as LMGs go, is abysmal in terms of uptime. The QBB fares noticeably better here. With 75 plus 1 to a magazine, the QBB is capable of 25 and a third kills per reload. Its overall ammo reliability is still much worse than average for an LMG, but it's still significantly better than the average full auto, and it benefits from that in noticeably better uptime. Moving on to the barrel and grip suggestions. For the L86, a heavy barrel with a ergo/vertical grip is a good standard build for the weapon. This emphasizes its strengths compared to other LMGs, rounding roughly into what you'd expect of a more conventional bullpup assault rifle instead of an LMG, opening up the class to a familiar, aggressive style of play if you favor assault rifles more. The L86 is also an interesting candidate for a suppressor. Its velocity is penalized the second least proportionally to any other LMG, and it's tied with two other LMGs for the resulting velocity of 380 meters per second, the fastest suppressed velocity possible for any primary. However, the comparatively poor ammo reliability to other LMGs makes this a somewhat mediocre choice. As for the QBB, a heavy barrel plus any grip will work. It depends on your playstyle. The ergo/vertical grip will similarly bring its performance in line with assault rifles. Only in this case, you'll have 76 rounds to fire instead of just 31, allowing for a decently aggressive playstyle that can take better advantage of a tighter hip cone, where pre-firing can shore up the weakness of a slower firing rate. However, if you want to take more advantage of the QBB's precision, the angled foregrip statistically improves the weapon's performance the most and enables long-range controlled bursting to be an effective tactic. If, however, you'd rather focus more on mid-range with longer bursts to take better advantage of its larger magazine, the stubby/potato grips arguably makes the most tactical sense, even if the sheer statistical improvement isn't as noticeable as the angled grip. Keep in mind, the angled grip isn't the only option to mitigate its high first shot recoil multiplier. The QBB features a burst fire mode, which will move that multiplier to the final shot in a 3-round burst, which can enable longer range precision when you need it. Moving on to sights and accessories. Because these are bullpups, your sight selection will actually affect the mobility of your gun when you're aiming. For the L86, I generally advise a 1x or RDS sight with a laser for all builds, so you can maintain that faster 75% movement speed. For the QBB, I generally used it for longer range, so sacrificing the faster movement speed made some sense for greater zoom and what ends up being better moving ADS accuracy than any other LMG, so I gave it a 4x scope and a laser sight for those hip-fire situations. That said, if you want to go for a 1x or RDS sight on the QBB, that's very viable if you want to have an aim-stalking LMG with a large magazine. As for sidearm suggestions, the CZ75 works for the L86. You'll want something that has a fast draw and can perform acceptably at longer ranges, which the CZ is largely capable of. A suppressed sidearm works the best for a suppressed L86 to keep you consistently off the map, preferably the 1911 with a suppressor. The QBB's needs can generally be pretty effectively taken care of with a close-range focused sidearm. It has a fairly large magazine, but due to its somewhat unwieldy reload times, you might want something with a slightly faster draw than the G18, leaving the 93R as a good middle ground. It'll also perform somewhat better at longer ranges in comparison to the G18, which also meshes better with the QBB's performance. Taking a look at gadgets, for these LMGs the ammo box is pretty much a must-have, since you'll want to do tactical reloads, meaning you will burn through your own ammo at a faster rate than box magazine LMGs. These are probably also the only LMGs where the ammo pack is the strongest it's ever going to be for an LMG, as the packs favor an aggressive playstyle and benefit from the faster deploy times, since throwing a pack counts as equipment swapping. And seeing as these LMGs generally favor more aggressive play, C4 becomes even more handy in cases where you are playing in vehicle-focused maps. Due to these LMG's top performing deploy times relative to other LMGs, a smoke launcher or ballistic shield also makes decent sense for infantry-only situations where it's important to push forward through the enemy positions. As for grenades, an RGO or M67 makes the most sense in infantry-only maps. However, again, because these are aggressive LMGs, in vehicle maps where you'll be more likely going for C4 vehicle kills, smoke grenades combine effectively with C4, as they can permit you to get in close, or even throw a smoke down and then place C4 on the ground as a trap for incoming vehicles. This is a situation where the field upgrade is largely obvious. The offensive field upgrade is by far your best bet. Faster sprinting, an extra grenade, and a longer safe fall distance all synthesize well with an aggressive primary, with even the additional pool of ammunition for bullets holding some weight, as you won't need to spam your ammo box as frequently. These LMGs fulfill the role of an aggressive support player very effectively, largely simulating the performance of the bullpups you'd find exclusive to the assault class, while also retaining the generally better ranged performance you'd get with LMGs due to slightly better damage and spread. If you want to have access to the support class's suite of equipment and want to be able to rumble with assault players, these are the LMGs for you. If you want to be informed of future video releases by me, please consider subscribing and clicking the bell for notifications. Also consider liking the video if you enjoyed it. If there is something I missed, or you think I got wrong, or if you just want to contribute to discussion, please feel free to comment as well.